Good morning, students. So in our last video we studied about the evolution and the theories of origin of life, and in this class we will study about the morphological and anatomical evidences in support of evolution. So in this morphological and anatomical evidences we will study the homologous organs, the analogous organs, the vestigial organs, the reversion process, and embryological evidences in all that. So, starting with the evidences, what are these evidences? Usually, these evidences are the proof which tells about the pattern of evolution that have occurred in early past. So, these morphological and anatomical evidences, they are the proof which tells about the pattern of evolution that occurred in the early past. So, first we study about the homologous organs. So the first evidences are homologous organs. As the name indicates, that is homo, this homo means similar. Homo means similar. So those organs which are similar in their origin and structure but performs different functions. So those organs which are similar in origin and structure but performs different functions in different organisms are known as homologous organs. So homo means similar. So those organs which are present in different organisms, their origin is similar and their structure is also similar. But in different organisms, these organs performs the different functions. For example, if we take the example of homologous organs, that is, the first example is forelimbs in humans, horse, frog, they all have pentadactyl structure and their origin is also same. But in all these organisms, these forelimbs, they perform different functions. For example, in case of human beings, the forelimbs are used for grasping of some substance. In case of horse, the forelimbs are used for running, and in case of frog, the forelimbs are used to move the front portion of the body. So in all these organisms, the forelimbs, though they have similar structure and origin, but they perform the different functions. So the forelimbs in case of human beings, horse and frog, they are homologous organs. The second example is heart of vertebrates. That is also an example of homologous organs. The third example is phylloclade of Opuntia plant. This phylloclade, it is a modification of stem. Usually it is a stem. So phylloclade of Opuntia and stem of any plant. Stem of any plant, they are also homologous organs, because in this case the phylloclade is stem, but its function is to carry out the process of photosynthesis in Opuntia, and in case of this plant the structure is stem and it is responsible for providing the mechanical support to plant. So in both cases the structure is same, the origin is same, because both are stems but both are performing different functions. The phylloclade, it is responsible for photosynthesis, and here in this case the stem is responsible for providing the mechanical support to plants. Now another example is thorns of bougainvillea and tendrils of cucurbita. Tendrils of cucurbita. So these are also the homologous organs. Now these homologous organs, they tells about the divergent evolution. So these homologous organs, they indicates the divergent evolution. Now what is this divergent evolution? So this divergent evolution means if in a group of organisms which are belonging to the same species, and if they end up with a totally different two areas having the different climatic conditions, the different habitat and different topography, then the body organs of these organisms, they gets adapted to that particular environment, and due to these adaptations these body organs starts performing different functions, but the origin and structure wise these organs are similar, but due to adaptations, due to environmental changes, due to habitat, these organs started performing the different functions. That means these organs, they originated from the common point, that is all organisms have the similar structure and origin of these organs, but because these organisms have moved to different habitats which have different topography and different environmental conditions, due to which these body organs started performing different functions. So from similar origin and structure, these body organs, they got divergent, they resulted in divergent. So this type of evolution, it is known as divergent evolution. Now now the second type of evidence, that is your analogous organs. Now what are these analogous organs? So these analogous organs are the organs which differs in structure and origin, but they performs same function. So those organs which perform same function, but they are different in their structure and origin, those organs are known as analogous organs. So analogous organs are the organs which differs in their structure and origin, but they perform the same function. For example, the wings of birds and wings of insects are the example of analogous organs. In this case, that is in case of birds, the wings are made up of bones, whereas in case of insects, the wings are made up of a protein, that is chitin protein. So structurally in both, that is in birds and insects, the wings are different. In one they are made up of bones and in other they are made up of chitin, but in both cases the wings have the same function, that is of flying. Now the second example is eyes of cephalopods and humans or men. Eyes of cephalopods and humans, they are also the example of analogous organs. Now the third example is phylloclade of Opuntia and leaves of any plant. Leaves of any plant. Now see, in this case, this phylloclade, they are stem, and in this second case the structure is leaves. So in one case, in case of Opuntia plant, the phylloclade are stem, and in this case the structure is leaves. So structurally they both are different. Structurally both differs from each other, but both carry out the same function, that is of photosynthesis. That is of photosynthesis. So in case of our plants, the leaves carry out the photosynthesis, and in case of that plants which are usually found in xeric conditions. The phylloclade, that is the modification of a stem, it is responsible for carrying out the process of photosynthesis. So these are the three examples of analogous organs. Now the third evidence is vestigial organs. What are these vestigial organs? So these vestigial organs are the organs which are not functional in present organism, which are not functional or non-functional in present organism, but they were functional in our ancestors. So those organs which are non-functional in the present organism, but they were functional once in our ancestors. Such organs are known as vestigial organs. For example, the example of vestigial organs includes, that is, nictitating membrane. Nictitating membrane present in eyes of humans. So this nictitating membrane that is present in eyes of humans, it is non-functional in present organism, but it is functional in aquatic organism. The second example is, if you heard about vermiform appendix, you have heard about this appendix disease. It is related to vermiform appendix. So this vermiform appendix, it is a part of digestive system, that is, it is a part of cecum. It is a part of cecum, and this vermiform appendix, it is responsible for cellulose digestion. So earlier, when our ancestors used to eat plants and all that, at that time the vermiform appendix is functional and it was responsible for the digestion of cellulose which is present in the plants or in their food. But now we are not consuming such type of food, so this vermiform appendix, it got reduced in size, but it is still present in our body. So this vermiform appendix, it is non-functional at present time, and that's why it is also a vestigial organ. The third example is wisdom teeth. Wisdom teeth, that is also known as akkalzar. So this wisdom teeth, it is last molar teeth, and if it usually arises at the age of 30 or plus, and when it is not present up to 29, 27, 26, then still we can manage our eating and all that process. So this wisdom teeth, it is also an example of vestigial organs. It is present in our ancestors, and it at that time it was used for chewing the hard part of the food, but at present time it is non-functional. Now the next example of vestigial organs is muscles of pinna or auricular muscles. So muscles of pinna or auricular muscles, they are usually used to turn our ears in the side from where the sound is coming. So these were functional in our ancestors, but at present they are non-functional. Now the next example of vestigial organs is presence of mammary gland. Presence of mammary gland in human males, and these mammary glands, they are highly reduced in human males and they are non-functional. So these are also an example of vestigial organs. Similarly, the presence of clitoris in females is also an example of vestigial organ. This clitoris, it is a penis-like structure. Penis though present in males. So in case of females, this clitoris, it is a penis-like structure and it is non-functional. So it is also an example of vestigial organs. Now, the sixth example of vestigial organs is presence of reduced wings in flightless birds such as ostrich. So the presence of wings in flightless birds is an example of vestigial organs such as in ostrich, because these wings are non-functional, they are not used for flying purpose. So all these are the example of vestigial organs. Now in case of analogous organ, one thing is left, that is convergent evolution. So as we know that homologous organs, they are responsible for divergent evolution. So the term we can use as HD for our remembering. We can use the HD, that is high definition, we are using LCD and all that. So homologous organs responsible for divergent evolution. But these analogous organs, they are responsible for, or they denotes the convergent type of evolution. Now what is this convergent evolution? So this convergent evolution means if different organs which are different in structure and origin, but if these organisms having different organs having different structure and origin, they are living in same habitat and same environmental conditions, then these different organs having different origin and structure, these organs, they converge to perform the similar function, and that type of evolution is known as convergent evolution. So these organisms having different structure and different different function, origin, but all these structures, that these structures are different in their origin and in their structure, but because the organism is living in the same habitat, so these organs started performing the same function. That means all these organs, they converge to perform the same function, and such type of evolution is known as convergent evolution, and analogous organs are responsible for convergent evolution. Now the fourth type of evidences are known as avartism or reversion. Avartism or reversion. So this avartism is the process of occurrence of ancestral characters in the present organism. So avartism is the occurrence of ancestral characters in present organism. Now come to the example of this reversion or avartism. The example includes the presence of tail in human baby. It is avartism. This tail, it was in our ancestral character, and still the human baby borns with this tail, then it is the process of reversion. Now the second example is the lion baby. If you heard about this lion baby, this lion baby, it is a human baby. It is a human baby that is born with a thick fur, on its body. So lion baby is a human baby that is born with a thick fur on its body. So these are the two examples of avartism. Now there is one more example of avartism, that is the functional auricular muscles in certain human beings. You have seen certain human beings, they are capable of moving their ears. So those human beings, they have functional auricular muscles. That's why they can move their ears, and it is our characteristic of ancestors. So it is our ancestral characteristic which is still continuing in certain human beings. So it is also an example of reversion or avartism. Now, the fifth type of evidences for evolution are known as connecting links. These connecting links are the type of organism, usually they are the organism which shares the characteristics of two different organisms. So these organisms, they are responsible for connecting two different organisms, or you can say they are the organisms sharing the characteristics of two different organisms. So they connect these two organisms. So the example of these connecting links, first of all, what is connecting links? So the organism sharing characters of two different organisms are known as connecting links. Now the example is, first example is Protopterus. This Protopterus, it shares the characteristics of Bonifacius or Boniface and amphibians. So this Protopterus, it shares the characteristics of Bonifacius and amphibians. Like Bonifacius, this Protopterus contains the fins, that is paired fins. They contains gills and contains dermal scales on their body. So Protopterus, it shares the characteristics of Bonifacius. Which characteristics of Bonifacius it contains? It contains the paired fins, it contains the gills and dermal scales on the body. Now this Protopterus, it also shares the characteristics of amphibians. What could be the characteristics that Protopterus shares of amphibians? That is the presence of lungs and three-chambered heart. Three-chambered heart. So these are the two characteristics of amphibians present in Protopterus. Now the second example of connecting link is Ornithorhynchus. Ornithorhynchus. And this Ornithorhynchus, it also shares the characteristics of two organisms, that is the mammals and reptiles. So it shares the characteristics of mammals and reptiles. So like mammals, this Ornithorhynchus, it contains the hairs, it contains the diaphragm. So like mammals, this Ornithorhynchus, it contains the hairs, it contains the diaphragm, and it also contains the mammary gland. Now like reptiles, this Ornithorhynchus, it is usually a oviparous. So oviparous is a characteristic of these reptiles which are present in Ornithorhynchus, and it also contains cloaca. So these are the two characteristics of reptiles which are present in Ornithorhynchus. Now the third example of this connecting links is Tachyglossus. This Tachyglossus, it also acts as a connecting link, and it also shares the characteristics of two different organisms, that is mammals and reptiles. So Tachyglossus is a connecting link between these mammals and reptiles. Now the sixth evidences of evolution is embryological evidences. So these embryological evidences, they are related to our embryo usually, and the first example is the early development early development of all triploblastic organism is similar. So that means these all triploblastic organisms, they have some common ancestor. That's why in these organisms the early development of their embryo is similar. So early development of triploblastic organism is similar in all organisms, starting from platyhelminths to mammals. Starting from platyhelminths to mammals. That means that all these complex life forms or complex organisms, they came from early simple organism, because in all these organisms the zygote during its development, it undergoes the blastulation, and this then undergoes the gastrulation and results in the formation of embryo that is covered by, or that consists of three different membranes, that is our ectoderma, that is outermost layer, the mesoderma, that is middle layer, and endoderma, that is innermost layer. So in all these organisms starting from platyhelminths to mammals, the early development of this embryo, that is in triploblastic organism, is similar. That means all these complex life forms, they came from the early simple life forms. Now the second example of embryological evidences is early embryonic development in vertebrates. That is early embryonic development in vertebrates. Early embryonic development in vertebrates. Now, starting from fishes to mammals. So, if we see the development of this embryo in vertebrates, starting from the fishes, then amphibians, then reptiles, then in aves or birds, and in mammals. So in all these organisms, the early embryonic development is similar. That means all these organisms have some common ancestors. They have some common ancestor. Now the third example is presence of temporary embryonic structures. Presence of temporary embryonic structures. And in this case, the birds are the example. These birds, their egg contains the egg tooth, and this egg tooth disappears. It disappears when egg hatches. So birds, in case of birds, the egg contains the egg tooth, but this egg tooth disappears when the egg hatches. And this presence of egg tooth, it is a characteristic of reptiles. So that means these birds, they may have arise from the reptiles. That's why they have the reptilian characteristic. So it is the relation between reptiles and birds. Now the next type of evidences, they are known as paleontological evidences, and these are based on study of fossils. So paleontology is the branch of science that deals with the study of fossils, and Leonardo da Vinci was said to be the father of paleontology. Leonardo da Vinci was the father of paleontology, and these paleontological evidences, they are based on the study of fossils. Now, what are fossils first of all? So these fossils are the remains of plants or animals that existed in earlier or past time. So when they undergone the death, their dead bodies got buried inside the soil, and the soft part of their body, it got metabolized, or it got decomposed by the decomposers, but the hard parts such as bones, such as the skeleton and the impression, they were present and found as such when we dig the soil. So these fossils are the remains of the bones, the skeleton, or the impressions of animals or plants which existed in earlier times. Now, how can we find out the age of these fossils? So, by using a technique that is known as carbon dating process, we can find out the age of these fossils. It is also known as C14 dating process. And this carbon dating process, it was given by Libby. Libby was the scientist who gave this carbon dating process or C14 dating process. There is one more method of finding out the age of these fossils, that is by digging process, and during digging we see that in how much depth or in how much the size of digging, that where that bone or skeleton have been found. So during this carbon dating process, this carbon, it have a tendency that it decreases in amount in a specific time period and in a specific amount in a specific time period. So this carbon dating, it is used to find out the age of fossils. Now, the example of these fossils includes, that is the most important example, that is Archaeopteryx. Archaeopteryx. So these Archaeopteryx, these are usually known as missing links. These are known as missing links. And they share the characteristics of two different organisms. Archaeopteryx are usually the fossils which are known as missing links, and they share the characteristics of two different organisms. That is, they share the characteristics of the reptiles and birds. Reptiles and birds. Sorry. They share the characteristics of reptiles and birds. Now, the reptilian characteristics which are present in these Archaeopteryx includes the presence of teeth, the presence of caudal vertebra, and the presence of digit claws. And the characteristics of birds which are present in Archaeopteryx are presence of wings, presence of three fingers, and 4 toes. Next, that is presence of sternum, which is a bone, and the presence of beak. So this Archaeopteryx, it shares the characteristics of reptiles, that is presence of teeth, the caudal vertebra, and digit claws. And the birds characteristics which are present in Archaeopteryx or these fossils are presence of wings, 3 fingers and 4 toes, presence of sternum, and presence of beak. So because this Archaeopteryx, it is a missing link between reptiles and birds, so it can be said that these reptiles or these birds, they came from the reptiles. So these reptiles, they have undergone the changes during evolution process. They have undergone the mutations, variations, and during evolution they converted into the birds. Now, the second example of these paleontological evidences is pteridosperms. These are the plants which do not exist now, do not exist at present time, and but these pteridosperms, they share the characteristics of ferns and gymnosperms. So they contains the most of the characteristics of ferns, most of characteristics of ferns, and few characteristics of gymnosperm, such as presence of seed. So these seeds, they are present in these gymnosperm, and they also show the secondary growth, which is also a characteristic of gymnosperm. So these pteridosperms, though they are not present or they do not exist now, but they share the characteristics of two different organisms or plants, that is ferns and gymnosperm. They have most of the characteristics of ferns, and they also have certain characteristics of gymnosperm, such as presence of seed, and they show the secondary growth.